Hello everyone, and especially hello Arrowhead. Uncle Wolf is here to fix the mess you started. So make sure to shape your ears into rudder dishes and listen carefully all the suggestions in this video. I can assure you, if all of this is implemented, your game will not only get back on track, but will also gain more players than before. And of course, you're absolutely free to just ignore it and keep going your way. I'm not gonna force you. This video will be completely focused on the balance changes of all weapons, stratagems, enemies, and ship modules the game needs to feel good and unique, but not completely overpowered against our enemies. There will be no nerfs, zero, circle, nope, just buffs, reworks, and new unique additions. Before we get into it, please note, I'm going to only talk about the equipment I think needs some improvement. If something isn't mentioned, it means I think it's balanced and doesn't need any changes. Starting with our primary weapons, let's get straight into the assault rifles. Liberator Penetrator. I would give this weapon 55 damage per shot and reduce the recoil to 16. The higher damage per shot is compensated by the much lower magazine size of 30 bullets, so this would make the weapon perfect. To compensate for this change, reduce the total mag carry capacity to 8. Moving on, Liberator Concussive. This weapon is severely underperforming, so I'm going to give it lots of love. Reduce recoil to 5 and give it the standard Liberator scope, so to allow it to be more efficient overall. Additionally, increase its damage to 100, which will be compensated by the slow rate of fire. Remove the stagger force and make so the weapon immobilizes targets like the pre-nerf Pummeler did. Carbine Liberator. Good weapon, just needs a tiny bit of love. Reduce recoil to 19. Adjudicator. Almost a perfect weapon. Reduce recoil to 30. Diligence Counter Sniper. I think this weapon is mostly balanced. I would just reduce its recoil to 45. Knight. This can be an incredibly fun weapon, though it needs some changes. I'm proposing to reduce the rate of fire to 1150, which is the same of the Stalwart at its maximum RPM settings. Additionally, give it 10 total mag size capacity and reduce recoil to 19. Pummeler. It just needs its stun ability buffed. This buff, however, is done by nerfing enemies. Reduce the stun resistance from Devastator so to allow Pummeler to stun them in just 2 or 3 hits, if it penetrates. Moving now onto shotguns. Punisher Slug. Remove the nerfs done in the latest patch. The Punisher shotgun family is known to have stagger. Hell, even the new Cookout shotgun has it. Cookout. I like this shotgun. All I'm proposing for it is for its fire to last longer when applied on enemies. Torture. Same as the Cookout. Make so the fire lasts longer when applied on enemies and on the ground. Standard Breaker. Give it its old mag model back and increase mag size to 15. Incendiary Breaker. Nerfing total ammo count is a stupid tactic to discourage players from picking up a weapon. You guys don't realize how much ammo a single bug breach can cost on harder difficulties. For this shotgun, I'm proposing to give it back 4 magazines and lower the damage from 240 to 200, retaining some good firepower while still being able to set enemies on fire to chip their health away. Breaker Spray and Pray. Increase its mag size to 30 shells and increase the damage to 250 per shell. This will allow the Spray and Pray to compete with other shaft clearing shotguns, since it will now be more effective up close, and the increased damage will allow it to quickly kill even the tankier enemies thanks to its very quick rate of fire, and also keep hordes under control on close to medium range. Moving on to explosive weapons. Dominator. Why is the Dominator in this category again? Anyway, I would just give it 25 damage back, which will bring it up to 300, and slightly improve its ergonomics. Crossbow. The single hand change was actually pretty dope, though I'm still going to suggest a rework for it. Add a new ammo type on top of the current one. This new ammo type is a bolt that packs more explosives on it, causing it to fly much slower and requiring more skills to fire at a distance. This ammo has armor penetration too. However, it has bigger splash radius. I would say give it the same splash radius as the current Raptor. The current ammo type will still be able to be used, of course, which is the exact opposite. Flies fast, has AP3, but a much smaller splash radius. A Raptor. There are two solutions for this weapon. The first one is the easiest, give it its sharpener back. The second one requires a bit more work. First, remove the nerf that increased its explosion damage drop-off, and then massively increase its splash radius. I would give it the pre-rework crossbow splash radius, it was huge. Plasma Punisher. I think this weapon is mostly fine, though it struggles a bit against certain enemies. It can't one-shot hunters on a direct hit, and that is kinda bullshit. Give its projectile 50 extra damage, bringing it up to 150, dealing a total of 300 damage when stacked with explosion damage. Alternatively, increase its mag capacities to 16, like the other Punisher versions. Sight and Dagger. I'm proposing a rework for continuous laser beam weapons. If we look at our orbital laser, we can't help but think that it's just a massively bigger sight, which deals a lot more damage and has a lot more range. Then let's make the sight similar to it. Increase damage to 550 for the sight and 350 for the dagger, and allow them to set enemies on fire after prolonged shooting, especially after the ECE has reached half of its overheat meter. This will allow extra DPS for these weapons, and a unique ability that will surely be liked by many players. Give dagger 7 seconds of firing time and sight 9 seconds of firing time. Purifier. The stats report that this weapon has 250 rate of fire, which is the same stat that we can find on the Scorcher. This is obviously a lie, though here's my proposed rework. Hear me out. Let's reduce its base damage from 250 to 200, but let it work like the old arc thrower in terms of firing. Allow it to charge up to 1 second. If charged for 1 second, the weapon should deal 400 damage. Alternatively, the player can charge it up for half a second and release the trigger early for 200 damage. This will allow it to dish out sustained fire and will also make this weapon a lot more unique on its own. Now moving on to secondary weapons. Peacemaker. This is the basic pistol, and I think its damage is fine stats-wise. However, it is supposed to be a very light weapon. Because of this, I am suggesting to lower the recoil down to 2. Senator. Reduce recoil to 38. Verdict. I love this pistol. It feels good, it shoots good, and it looks like a Desert Eagle, but the light armor penetration really holds it back. I suggest to increase its recoil to 43 and reduce its damage per shot to 105, and then give it medium armor penetration. This brings it on par with the Senator, with both weapons now being able to deal 1050 damage per magazine/cylinder. With the Senator having the advantage of dealing more damage per shot, easily one-shotting Devastators at a cost of a lower rate of fire and better recoil, while the Verdict will require 2 headshots to kill a Devastator, having much worse handling if fired at its maximum RPM of 450 and having more recoil. Grenades. Frag Grenade. Increase the radius to 10. This grenade is designed to kill smaller targets, and that's why it has less penetration, and this is the perfect buff for it. Incendiary Grenade. Increase radius to 8 and reduce fuse to 2.5 seconds. Termite. Massively increase its durable damage so it can be used to strip armor off of heavy targets. Having AP7 doesn't matter if it can't remove the armor. This will effectively make the grenade much more usable, allowing it to weaken heavy targets and stripping armor off of them so they can be finished off by other weapons. Smoke. Not much to say about this, I would just make the smoke screen last a few more seconds. Throwing Knife. Allow the throwing knives to be retrievable if killing an enemy smaller than a Brood Commander or a Devastator. Now moving on to my favorite, armors. First of all, I'm suggesting to give more damage reduction to armors. I'll be taking information from this video from Araven. I really suggest to go and watch it to understand my suggestions more easily. You will find the link in the description, so make sure to go and watch it right now. I'm going to propose values that are much simpler and will benefit the armors a lot more. Additionally, my proposal will make headshots a lot less punishing. There's no fucking way our helmets should grant 0 armor. Starting with basic light armor, which provides 50 armor, I'm suggesting to reduce the damage taken from head and torso down to just 100%, while for limbs, I'd reduce it to 75%. Explosive damage remains unchanged. Basic light armor with 64 armor value. More armor equals more damage reduction, so the damage to the head will now be 95%, and the damage to the torso will also be 95%. The damage to limbs will be 70%, and explosive damage remains unchanged. Moving on to light armor with 70 value, damage to the head and torso will now be 90%, while on limbs it will be 65%. Explosive damage remains unchanged. Light armor with 79 armor value. Damage to the head and torso will now be 85%, while on limbs it will be 60%. Explosive damage is unchanged. Moving on to medium armors, these will also include light armors with extra padding. Damage to the head and torso will be 75%, while on limbs it will be 50%. Explosion damage is unchanged. Medium armor with 129 value. Damage taken to the head and torso will be 65%, while arms will be taking 40% damage. Explosion damage is unchanged. Basic heavy armor. This includes medium armors with extra padding. Torso and head damage will be taking 50% damage, while limbs will be taking 30% damage. Explosion damage is unchanged. Heavy armor with extra padding, 200 armor value. Head and torso will be taking 35% damage, while limbs will be taking 20% damage. Explosive damage is unchanged. On top of this, I am introducing a new resistance type for armors, ragdoll and flinch resistance. Light armors will get 40% chance to prevent flinching and 30% chance to prevent ragdoll every time we are hit. Medium armors, which includes light armor with extra padding, will have a 70% chance to prevent flinching and a 50% chance to prevent ragdoll when hit. Heavy armor, which includes medium armor with extra padding, will have 100% chance to prevent flinching and 75% chance to prevent ragdoll. Heavy armor with extra padding will gain 100% chance to prevent ragdoll. We are now switching into armor passive. I dedicated a lot of thinking about armor passives, as I wanted them to be not only better, but have unique abilities that differentiate one from another. Starting with the inflammable passive, honestly, I would just increase the resistance to fire to 99%. I don't see the issue if I want to take a bath in my own napalm while getting chased by enemies. It would be fun and effective. On top of this, I would also grant a 50% damage resistance to other dot types of damage, like gas and acid. Extra padding. On top of the current bonuses, I would give it an explosive resistance bonus, something small like 20%, as well as an extra 10% resistance to flinching and ragdolling. Scout armor. On top of the current bonuses, I would give this armor the ability to ping and mark objectives on the map, just like you could ping stalker layers if you had a good eye before it got changed and of course nerfed because it would be too fun. The manual ping should also detect secondary POIs. Peak physique. I would increase melee damage from 50 to 100%, and improve ergonomics from 30 to 50%, and add a reduction of environmental slowdown effect of about 15%. Democracy protects. On top of the current bonuses, I would give it a 25% resistance to all dot effects like gas, fire, and acid. Electric protection. I don't know the name, but you get which one it is. I would simply make so this armor prevents anything electric in our arsenal from targeting you, like Tesla towers, Blitzer, Arc Thrower. Enemies will still be able to target you, of course. Servo assisted. On top of the current bonuses, I would give a bonus that reduces the reload speed of any weapon or stratagem by 25%. Medic kit. On top of the current bonuses, allow this armor to heal 50% of a teammate's health bar when interacting with them, without using stimulants of course. Give it a 15 seconds cooldown. Engineer. On top of the current bonuses, allow players equipping this armor to be able to repair and refill ammo of vehicles on field. The ammo refill, though, requires a supply pack equipped. Each supply refills 25% ammo of the vehicle. Give the repair ability 5 minutes cooldown. Fortified. On top of the current bonuses, add an extra 20% resistance to ragdolling and flinching. Moving on to boosters, which I gave the same treatment as armor passives. Hellpod Space Optimization. On top of the current effects, make so the supplies stratagem restores 100% of grenades and stimulants. Flexible Reinforcement Budget. Increase time reduction to 45 seconds. This booster is supposed to work when a team is on the brink of losing a mission. Therefore, the bonus it provides should be massive, since it will be useless for the rest of the mission until you reach 0 reinforcement available. Increased reinforcements budget. Increase the reinforcements provided from 4 to 5 when in a full team, and from 1 to 2 when solo. Muscle Enhancement. On top of the current effects, reduce by 50% slowdowns caused by water, tall grass, bushes, barbed wire, and acid. UAV Recon Booster. On top of the current effects, add 50% radar range when Spore Spewer's planet effect is present, and allow it to mark targets with specific icons. For example, if there's a tank nearby, make it show a tank icon rather than a big red circle. Localization Confusion. On top of the current effect, make so enemies that spawn from bot drops or bug breaches are unaware of the player's position until spotted or until players reveal themselves by firing, etc. Expert Extraction Pilot. Increase time reduced to 60 seconds and make so the Pelican will not abort extraction if a Helldiver is present at the extraction area. Motivational Shocks. Allow Helldivers to dive when in slightly deep water and remove water slowdown, increase swimming time by 100%, and increase recovery speed from slowdown effects to 90%. Experimental Infusion. On top of the current effect, add a 15% faster reload animation speed bonus for the entire steam duration. Now moving on to enemies. The reason I'm moving on to enemies before moving on to stratagems is because rather than changing stratagems that are already balanced, I will change enemies that would need it anyway. First, something that all enemies need to be changed. Force enemies to lose aggro on you if you get too far away from them, or if a blizzard/sandstorm takes place. Terminates. This will apply to all Terminates. Remove their ability to climb anything vertically. This is just stupid and ruins the fun out of the jump pack. I remember a Brute Commander charged into a mountain and instantly climbed at the top. Also, the spawns need fixing. After the recent changes, regular chargers and regular Brute Commanders barely spawn anymore, and Alpha Commanders are just all over the place. These are supposed to be special enemies, so they should have a lower spawn chance in bug breaches and patrol. I would do a ratio of 60-40, where 60% of regular enemies and 40% of new special enemies. Additionally, fix the time needed for a bug to be into the calling animation to 0.5 seconds. It's not possible that you need to have instant reactions to stop a bug breach, especially if a hunter decides to call it. And even when it looks like you did stop it, it's gonna spawn anyway. This needs fixing. Moving on to specific enemies, we are starting from hunters. This enemy is weird because it is often allowed to survive shots from the best primaries with the most damage. For example, hunters are very often able to survive a direct hit from a dominator. Arrowhead, are you telling me that hunters have more than 275 health? This is incredibly retarded. If we assume that hunters have 300 health, I'd cut it right off to 150. With the armor rework, hunters shouldn't be too much of a bother, so nothing else is changed for them. Ball Spewers. Not many players know this, but Ball Spewer's mouth is not armored and can be damaged by weapons that have less than AP3. My suggestion is to increase the hitbox of the mouth so to allow more skilled players to deal with Ball Spewers more comfortably with weapons that don't have AP3. Spore Chargers. I would reduce the radius of the explosion when it dies. Also, Spore Chargers are unable to bleed out, means that if the ass is popped, they will explode instantly and damage the players around them. Introduce bleed out mechanics to allow players to pop their ass and move away safely before it dies and explodes. Behemoth Charger. Reduce health of the front legs so the anti-tank weapons can still strip the armor off in one shot or two shots for the railgun. Head can stay the same. Bile Titan. Remove damage resistance while spewing. This is just stupid. Impaler. Give it a sound cue that it will always make whenever its tentacles are emerging, so to allow players to rely on sound cues and quickly locate the enemy. This thing has 160 meters operational range, and while the rocket launching tanks are easier to spot because there's a massive rocket trail that you can see coming at you, these things are super stealth because they often confuse with the environment. When they stand still, they look like rocks. This is just stupid. Come on, dude. And on top of this, reduce the tentacles' health. Now moving on to automatons, devastators, and hulks specifically. These enemies are really cancerous to fight against, and often very hard to kill due to all the bullshit they are allowed to do. Increase the hitbox of their visor/head so to make it a bit more forgiving when barely missing it. Alternatively, make so their head or visor takes a percentage of explosive damage, provided that said damage has enough penetration and that the explosion is close enough to the head. Rocket Devastators. Increase salvo cooldown to 7 seconds and force Devastators to go into a reload after firing the first 2 salvos of rocket. Reload should be pretty quick, so I'd say 2 seconds for that. Reduce health of rocket pods. Heavy Devastator. Limit the turning angle of their arm to 30 degrees. Lower their turning speed significantly and reduce the health of their minigun arm. Scout Strider. Remove explosion resistance given in the previous updates. Gunships. Reduce thrusters durability even further. 5% you reduced in the last patch is nothing. Now moving on to stratagems. Patriotic Administration Center. MG43. I feel like this weapon is almost in its perfect spot. And I know, developers are reluctant on changing mag size of weapons because that would require them to redo the whole model of the magazine. But I feel they could close an eye for this weapon. I in fact suggest to increase its mag size from 150 to 200 AMR. I would give it like 20% extra durable damage. Nothing else. Flamethrower. Oh boy, the community has been really angry after the fire damage was reworked. A quick note before I go into my suggestion. I feel like they didn't think this nerf through because I believe someone knew that the weapons would have been melting chargers if nothing was done. But honestly, this was not the path they should have taken. I believe it is fair for the primary and secondary flame weapons to have their flame bounce off of the thicker armor, though the flamethrower is a stratagem, and like you guys said, being a stratagem, it must be stronger than its primary weapon counterpart. Therefore, the suggestion is to increase its range to be at least 50 or even 100% more than it currently is, and of course, give it the unique ability of its flame going through armor. This will justify the amount of recoil you guys gave it for absolutely no good reason. With the flame being much more powerful, this will feel good when used. Heavy machine gun. I would reduce the base recoil by about 30% and give it 125 mag size, and of course, close an eye on this magazine model too. Laser cannon. I would increase its damage to 650. Airburst rocket launcher. I would give its explosions AP4. Railgun. Nothing to say about this weapon. Simply revert it to how it was before you guys murdered it. Don't worry, it won't one-shot Pile Titans this time. Spear. I would make so the spear applies a heavy bleeding effect on terminate enemies, which will slowly eat their health away, if not insta-killed of course. I would also increase its damage to be able to instantly kill hulks from any angle. Orbital cannons. Orbital laser. I would increase its durable damage and armor penetration. It needs to melt through armor and destroy arms, remove limbs, remove heads, explode asses. Orbital rail cannon. Reduce cooldown to 120 seconds. Hangar. Eagle strafing run. I would increase the size of the line at which Eagle will shoot, and also make it shoot for longer and much further. This of course means that Eagle will have to slow down during the procedure, and her aircraft will be more vulnerable to automatons anti-air. Jump pack. Reduce cooldown by half, and allow it to set whatever is behind us on fire when used. 110mm rocket pods. Increase damage to 300 per 2 rockets for a total of 900 damage. Bridge. Orbital gas. Increase its duration and make it cover a wider area. Orbital EMS. Allow it to stun Bile Titans, Impalers, and tanks. Shield Relay. Increase duration to 60 seconds. Tesla Tower. Increase rate of fire, armor penetration, and stagger force so it can stagger chargers. Engineering Bay. All mine stratagems reduce cooldown to 120 seconds. Supply pack. Make so packing methodology works for both the giver and the receiver. Grenade launcher. Give it 2 more belts for a total of 5 belts. Rover guard dog. We already know it will be nerfed by implementing an overheat mechanic, so here's something to compensate for it. Remove heavy targets from the pool of enemies it will fire at, such as hulks and chargers. Arc thrower. Completely rework this weapon. Allow it to fire after charging for half a second for its current stats, and allow it to also charge for 1 second, which will grant more targets hit by the arcs, more damage, more range, and more armor penetration. Point away from teammates. Quasar cannon. Reduce cooldown by 2.5 seconds. Shield generator pack. Reduce the time it takes for a damaged but still operational shield to start recharging to 8 seconds. Robotics workshop. All sentries. Remove dropships from the pool of enemies they can target. Both Gatling sentries. Give 50% more base ammo and remove heavy targets from the pool of enemies they can target. Exo 45 Patriot. Revert the nerf done to the rocket launcher's damage and armor penetration and give the rocket launcher its release gun depression value back. Exo 49 Emancipator. Increase ammo count to 150 per arm and increase durable damage to 120. A side note on smoke stratagems. Make them last a lot longer than they do now. The orbital should also last twice as longer than the eagle smoke. Now moving on to ship modules. Patriotic Administration Center. Donation Access License. On top of the current bonuses, add +1 total carry capacity of mag-fed stratagem weapons. Orbital Cannons. More guns. Rework and change. Change this to +15% duration and allow the stratagem to keep firing until the duration of the timer is over. 0G breach loading. Increase to 20% cooldown. Atmospheric monitoring. Introduce the orbital interference planet effect and allow this upgrade to ignore the increased dispersion on top of the current bonuses. Rage. Targeting software upgrade. On top of the current bonuses, add an additional bonus that reduces the increased call-in time planet effect by 50%. Nuclear radar. On top of the current effects, allow these to ping enemies and other stuff on the minimap around the player at the standard radar radius. So this means without the 50% bonus, but this only when the atmospheric spores are present. Power steering. On top of the current effects, allow hellpods to land anywhere without the Damas penalty introduced some patches ago. Engineering bay. Synthetic supplementation. Increase to 20%. Advanced construction. Increase health to 100%. Robotic workshop. Shock absorption gel. On top of the current effects, rather than 50%, grant a special 100% more ammo to non-explosive sentries and include the HMG emplacement so to get the bonus as well. High quality lubricant. Apply this to the HMG emplacement as well. Blast absorption. Increase from 50 to 75% explosion damage resistance. Cross-platform compatibility. On top of the current effects, add the autocannon sentry to work with it. Planet hazards. Intense heat. Reduce by half the penalties given to our stamina. Ion storms. Make ion storms completely shut down all electrical equipment, including ours and including automatons. Tremors. Allow stimulants to remove the effect of the tremors that forces player to be unable to sprint.